Okay, everyone. Wait, why are you reviewing this crap? Like, what? Why this? What's this nonsense? Here's the thing. Sometimes there are points in one's life when, you know, you're eating greasy pizza in your parents' basement, listening to some absurd and annoying heavy metal. Maybe you never had that. That's fine. No one has to do that beyond the age of 17 or 18, or 22. But nevertheless, at some point, it's still, even though one doesn't, commit to that lifestyle, there's still some appeal in popping on and just this riveting experience of some silly numbnuts macho claptrap like Tygers of Tang's Crazy Nights. Now, why is it that I can get a kick out of this album, and yet there's seemingly a lot of this sort of banal and stupid heavy metal, glam metal, hair metal, as we call it, in the 80s? Why is it that because this group's from earlier in the decade, there's got less of a production budget perhaps, and they seem to belong to the Nawabum as opposed to the LA music, hard rock scene? Is why does it make sense that I'm enjoying this album with John Sykes and not the Whitesnake 1987 album? Well, frankly, I think the reason is a band like Tigers of Tang, they weren't trying to change their sound or even attempt any particular kind of sound other than what came naturally to them in order to make more money. That came with the album afterward. They were sincerely hoping that Crazy Nights would make money. It didn't sell as well as they thought and wanted it to. Although this isn't to say that they were compromising their sound at all on Crazy Nights. This is just the best recording quality they'd had up to that point. What I really enjoy about the first three albums from this group is it really solidifies for me the appeal of that silly, very adolescent and masturbatory heavy metal of the very late 70s and early 80s. I think the new wave of British heavy metal, which comes to define heavy metal as we know it today, I mean, insofar as it was a mixture between the sound of Judas Priest and the intensity of punk rock, maybe Motorhead's the key missing link there. The new wave of British heavy metal, on one hand you have kind of more gothic and evil groups like Angel Witch, but on the other hand you have groups which are more about kind of a sort of party atmosphere at a gig, not without being sanitized, a kind of, raucous party sort of, rough and tumble beer drinking environment. And that's, I think, what Tigers of Tang were trying to accomplish. Interestingly, that they're named after imagery from Michael Moorcock's literature. Why I might gravitate toward the Tygers rather than a group like Def Leppard? It's interesting. Well, Def Leppard only sound like a Nawabum band on the first album, and I'm not that interested in the first album, to be honest. I found it kind of didn't do much for me. Iron Maiden have a certain, excuse me, Steve Harris, but certain punk intensity on the first album. Perhaps that's Diano's contribution. There's a tempo to Maiden, which was slightly what one term you could throw out is Judas Priest on steroids of Iron Maiden, although I think Maiden's focus on mythology and kind of specific lyrical imagery and a certain look makes me think that they wanted to be, when I say a Black Sabbath for the 80s, I mean like if Black Sabbath were the heavy metal band of the 70s, Iron Maiden were determined to be the heavy metal band of the 80s without sanitizing what heavy metal meant, and in fact upping the ante on it, while still embracing a new kind of attention span and look for that decade. I'm probably acting a bit silly. Anyway, it's interesting. Feel free to throw out any other examples of new wave of British heavy metal that you think I might be ignoring or potentially turning my nose up at, which is, and therefore it might be confusing that I'm praising Tigers of Pantang of all things. And it's not praise in the same way that I've praised some of these other albums. I just find an album like this is tremendous fun, and it makes me think of a world where you don't give a damn, and you're just, again, you're happy to just live in a basement, eat Pizza Hut, and just, fuck around all the time. It's just like, it's ridiculous. And by fuck around, it isn't to say you're going out and getting sex. You're in between relationships, which is, it's actually a fun experience earlier in life. Anyway, what we have with Crazy Nights, I happen to like probably the first Tigers of Pantang album the most. That's got a very raw production, and it's really, really objectively kind of sloppy and not innovative music, but it just fulfills such a function. And this album does too. Crazy Nights, it's just nuts. It's just, if you're gonna listen to any silly greasy pizza heavy metal album, it's gotta be Tigers of Pantang Crazy Nights. I think the music that's downstream of this album, what eventually becomes the LA kind of glam metal scene, it loses me because they're trying to make money with, these silly catchy hooks and emphasis on anthemic nonsense, especially after Bon Jovi. Well, I hate. I know there's a certain, you're just criticizing it because you're just calling it hair metal and you're criticizing it for the look. I don't care about the look. Wasn't around to see the fucking videos, right? This music, I hear it now and it just sounds like garbage to me. All that, the more sanitized American hair metal, glam metal of the later 80s. I think but I can see the appeal and the idea of that kind of music is being executed successfully on this album.